what is it? Mistakes are the portals to kind of creativity, you know, and I really believe that. Yeah, and you can have really, really bad ideas, but the person, your collaborator is not going to go, I ain't going to work with that guy again, because they know you're just figuring it out, you know?
How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for asking. Congratulations on the film. I really loved it.
Thank you.
Um, how much did you know about these institutions, these laundries, when they were open?
As a child growing up, thankfully not that much, because so the movie's set in the, as you say, the mid '80s, and I would have been maybe like nine around that time where the film is set. So I didn't really know much about it. I mean, I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic primary school and secondary school and all of that, and taught by brothers, and um, but I didn't know much about it. And then through the '90s and the early 2000s, what started as a trickle of sort of abuse re revelations just turned into a sort of an avalanche, and it all began to come out about how systemic this was and how many women were incarcerated, and it wasn't just the Magdalene Laundries. There was like industrial schools and private schools and religious orders, and it was really an awful lot to kind of process. And then I came across the book in like 2020 or 2021 when it came out, and I felt like this is a very gentle but still provocative way of looking at this time in history, and I thought maybe this could make an interesting, quiet but you know meaningful film, I suppose.
Gentle and meaningful are the words I'd use as well, because lest people think that this is like a documentary or anything right now, I just want to give people a little bit of an idea of who you play. So Bill, as I mentioned, he's a very stoic man. He has a family of his own. He has his own sadness that he's lived through, and that his mother was the way his mother was treated as an unwed mother, the kindness she was shown by a neighbor. He comes across one of these like abusive institutions while he's delivering coal. He starts to have these suspicions about what is actually happening inside. So now that everyone listening kind of knows that, how do you see your character's journey in the film?
It's interesting because I decided from the beginning not to play him as a sort of as a hero, even though I suppose on paper you could look at it as a heroic act. But I feel, to me, as you described, he's under all this. There's this sort of confluence of um, crises that hit him at the one time. One is all this undealt with grief about his mother not knowing who his father is. And there's the idea of raising five girls in this time in Ireland, in this sort of society. And then there's obviously the stuff that he encounters on his coal round when he sees these girls and what's happening to them. So it's this kind of sort of personal reckoning. And to me, it feels like he's actually in the middle of some sort of a nervous breakdown. You know, he can't sleep. He's sitting up at night. He doesn't talk, and that's a very familiar Irish trope, is the quiet, deep thinking Irish male. You know, because there was no outlet for these men. There was nowhere for them to go to really talk about what they were actually experiencing. So it's a lovely character to play, because you don't have text, really. You don't have exposition. You really have to play him through trying to transmit the emotions non-verbally. And I love that. To me, that's what, you know, when films work, it's really not what the characters are saying, it's how they're behaving and how they're sitting and how they're looking. And I love characters in reflection and in repose. So it was a big, big challenge for me to try and create this character in a mostly silent way.
So, two questions on that. First one is, and this might be a silly question, but I've never acted. Actually, no, I acted once, but I wasn't very good at it. I've never acted really. When you are having to portray so much with your body, and in the way you sit and the way you stand, as you mentioned, in the depths of the grief and tribulation that this character is going through, are you tired at the end of the day? Is it physically exhausting to do that?
I mean, it's the thing I absolutely love doing. So it's incredibly satisfying. I know when you have a good team around you, like the director Tim Mielants needs to take an awful lot of credit for this film. Um, I'd worked with him before on Peaky Blinders, and I knew he was a real artist. So we made this together, and like he is just incredible with actors. So I had someone that I really, really trusted, and he really, really pushed me in terms of going deep with the character, you know. Um, so I loved it. Yeah, you get exhausted, but in the good way. You know the way
Yeah.
when you go to bed worn out and you're like, that was a good day's work. You know, that's the sort of satisfaction you get from really challenging characters, I think.
When you say he had to push you, what weren't you accessing that he had to push you to access?
It's not necessarily that I wasn't accessing it, but it's like going deeper again. You think, right, that there we have a version of that, but let's just go deeper and deeper again, and let's push that. And you can only do that with someone that you really, really trust. And like I've said this before, but I'm a serial re-collaborator, and I've many of the people I've worked with for 20, nearly 30 years now, and because I feel like when you go into the work, you got this shorthand, you got this sort of simpatico or something that you can really just get to it. And there's no like getting to know you or like, I hope I don't make a fool of myself here or whatever. You're just straight into trying to find those that really, really truthful, honest kind of vibrations without sounding incredibly pretentious.
Well, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You sound grand. Don't worry about that. But did you feel any added? Because I'd know you from the films and TV shows that you're best known from. Of course, in Ireland, they know you from some of the early work you've done there. But did you feel any extra pressure knowing that both as a storyteller and as an actor here, you're telling a very Irish story?
Yes, I mean there was a sense of responsibility towards the novel, and then clearly there was a sense of responsibility towards the thousands and thousands of women for whom this was an actual lived experience, you know. Um, and there's people walking around today who were born in these institutions or were incarcerated in these institutions or never don't know who their mother and father is, don't know who their brothers and sisters are, and it's there. It's that's the legacy of the Catholic Church in Ireland. I mean, there was many good things that the church brought, like an education, for example, but we also have to accept the legacy. There's a legacy of abuse and cruelty. So I felt a real responsibility towards that because you want a film to be entertaining, but when it's a real life event and or these institutions that really existed, you just have to be very, very delicate and careful and respectful, I suppose.
Have you spoken to people who've survived those institutions since the film came out who've seen it?
Yes, we have actually. Yeah, yeah, we have. We've had a lot of lovely communications from them. Yeah, and it's very kind of overwhelming and very I don't know. It makes you feel very sort of it's just like an actor prancing around the place, but these people actually lived it. But it's been yeah, it's kind of been emotional for them.
And I'm sure for you.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose I didn't quite anticipate uh, how deep it would go, the story. You know, I knew the book was beloved and it's been taught on the curriculum in Ireland, and it's a massive. Uh, it's so many people have read it in the States and in North America, and but I didn't quite realize how deep it would run. But again, that's the power of art, because there's been so much written about this time in history. You know, so many academic papers and so many reports, but art can just connect in a different way, I think.
I suppose when I was watching it, I'm from Newfoundland on the east coast of Canada,
Yeah.
and in the late '80s, early '90s, we went through a very similar thing there. There was a massive scandal in monasteries there, as you may know, and
Yeah.
abuse of children by priests and abuse of children by brothers, and it really rocked. Similar to Ireland, our relationship with the church was sort of foundational in our daily society, and there was great intimidation, both official and unofficial. And it turned a lot of us, like myself included, like I think I was pretty devout up until then. And then I couldn't find my way. I could find my way to God, but I couldn't find my way to that organization, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
So I guess the question I had was when you said, I wanted to tell this story, um, but I wanted to do it in a gentle and meaningful way. I guess why did you want to tell it at all? What was motivating you?
To be totally honest, I thought it would make a good film. I mean, that's the primary motivation. But I don't ever want to see this film as an attack on, faith,
Of course,
because it really isn't. And I really think we have to make the distinction between personal faith and the sort of institution of the Catholic
of
Church.
course.
They're very, very, very different. And I bear no grudges towards anyone that has faith. What I suppose I object to is like the imposition of that faith on people, and I kind of object to absolutism and control over people's morals and people's bodies and all of those things. So that isn't what that is about, and I would hate for it to be construed as that, which I don't think it has been
No,
so far. But I suppose the really thing is I thought it would make a good film, and like I really enjoy films or theater or novels that can be entertaining, but then can also provoke conversation. That's all, and that's all. Like, and if you don't want to have a conversation about it, that's fine. But if you do, to me, that's a bonus. Do you know?
I understand. And I'm not trying to get you to give a UN Secretary General speech here about the meaning of the film, because there'd be
Yeah.
nothing more of a bummer for people who want to go see your film. But it did. I mean, we were talking about it, and the people who watch the show come from people who work on the show come from a varying degree of backgrounds, and we were talking about how in some ways it felt like this. I don't. We might relate to this. The film seemed to be about having the courage to speak up when things are bad, and it's not easy to speak up.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's why people see resonance in it, or it resonates, about what's happening in the world too. But what I also liked about the book is the sort of the structure of it, in that it's quite radical, in that the story really starts when the book ends and when the film ends, and that it gives an awful lot of power to the audience to go, all right, so we've seen this and this act has happened and the screen has gone to black, but what the hell happens now? And the amount of discussion and debate and opposing views that go on after the film is very satisfying to me, that people have different points of views, and I really like that, because a lot of stories wrap up and everything is neatly wrapped up in a bow and it's presented to you, whereas our film, it's completely left open to interpretation, which I'm proud of.
I mean, similar to there's no happy ending in any of these stories. There's no easy tie up to any of these stories.
I don't think so.
Can I ask you about the serial recollaborator thing?
Sure.
I was curious about that because I know you from we were talking about you in Oppenheimer, and we were talking about you with Christopher Nolan, and you've worked with him, what, I think 6 times.
That was the sixth film, yes.
What does keep you coming back to him? Is it just this is where I can find a gig, or is there something there that you get out of working with him over and over and over again?
Well, he's the guy that writes the scripts and generates the work, so he's the guy that calls me. And
You can
like
always
I
say
never,
no. You can always say I'm going to go lie down.
of course, but no, I've always said I'll be there. I'll always be there when he calls, because I think he's, one of the greatest living filmmakers. I think he's extraordinary, unique, one in a million talent, and working with Chris, changed my life profoundly. Started with Batman Begins back in 2004, so it's 20 years now. But the beauty of that is that the working relationship deepens every time you work, if you get on, and if the work is uh, 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 achieves some level, then I think you get this. It all comes back to trust and shorthand, and uh, just being able to communicate without blathering. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose no. Can,
Um,
can you can you give me an example? Like again, like I'm not an actor. I'd love to know what that means. Like when you go back 5 or 6 times, like what deepens means there.
you both know what is required of the other, for example, and so there's no getting to know you, and and you're not one of the most amazing things, I think, is that you can walk on Chris's set, or any set where you feel comfortable and safe, and you can just make a fool of yourself if you want. because a film set is really like a is like a little laboratory. You know what I mean? It's a private little laboratory where you're building this thing in tiny, tiny moments. Um, and a lot of the moments will not be used. So you're kind of mining for the really special moments. And in order to find the really special moments, you have to do a lot of foolish things. And if you don't trust the people that you're with, or you feel tense, or there's friction or whatever, you won't be able to go and make those foolish moments, which then kind of, what is it? Mistakes are the portals to kind of creativity, you know, and I really believe that.
I understand. So the more trust you have with someone, the more opportunities you can have to have these sort of spontaneous, joyful moments that might lead to something special on the thing.
Yeah,
And that's hard to
yeah,
do if
and you
you're
can
meeting them for the first time.
for sure, yeah, and you can have really, really bad ideas, but the person, your collaborator is not going to go, "Oh, I ain't going to work with that guy again," because they know you're just figuring it out, you know.
I wanted to ask you about winning the Oscar. Our producer Gloria and I were chatting about this. So me being from Newfoundland, and Glory's so she's Nigerian from the UK, and we were talking about how in our circles, if we had won an Oscar, I don't know if we'd get like, "We're so proud of you, great job." We'd probably we get made fun of a little bit, as and in their sort of way of good job. And Gloria mentioned to me that you sort of talked about that there's a sort of the Irish way from I think your brother and your buddies to you winning an Oscar was different than the way it was received in LA.
Yeah, but like for me in Ireland, like slagging we call it,
Yeah.
like taking the piss. I mean that is the highest form of affection, really. I mean, and my brother and my best friend came over as a surprise to the ceremony, and they were there with me, and it kind of made everything okay because you know, they were just slagging me off, and it was wonderful because it's all coming from a place of real love, you know, and you know it's the most incredible, insane, overwhelming, bizarre experience to be caught up in that. But when you have your buddies there, they're also experiencing it, and they see the real you in it. So it was that was one of the best parts of it.
What did they say
Was
to you?
having Oh, I can't remember. Some of them are the unrepeatable, even on digital radio.
What changes for you after you win an award like that? I asked Guillermo del Toro one time what happens after you win Best Picture, and he said, "I have to say, if you have a shred of tiny bit of doubt left or imposter syndrome in you," he says that does kind of go away the day after. Did you find anything like that after you won?
Oh gosh, I still have a healthy amount of that hanging
Really?
around. I think yeah, I think that's kind of key to it. Um, I mean, I set up a production company, and that was before the Oscar, but hopefully maybe in a market, you know, which is a very crude way of talking about it. People are more willing to invest in films, and that for me, that I'll take that. That's very useful, and maybe it gives me a little more independence in finding the sorts of stories that I want to tell. But genuinely, like, and this is completely honest, I really haven't thought about it uh, in any way. Like I went straight back to work that seemed to be my coping mechanism. I've done 3 films this year since March, so I probably should have a little think about it at some point, but I haven't because my whole thing is that my whole sort of motor as an artist is like move forward, like keep going, you know. You got to keep going, and like looking back, nostalgia is death, really, you know.
What do you mean?
I think if you're delighted with yourself and delighted with your work and delighted with your life, I don't think you're going to make very interesting work. So you got to go, right. That was good and that was wonderful. Now let's keep going to the next one.
I know, I feel the same, but sometimes I wish I could. Sometimes I wish I could just go, "That was good. We did it. Good job," you know?
I think that means you're good at your job.
You think so, really?
Yeah, you're not.
I mean, no, sorry, I don't mean, do you think I'm good at my job? I mean, do you think that's the, this whole interview was a ruse for you to get to give me the validation I so sorely needed, Cillian.
You
No,
can clip that.
no, but that insecurity, that voice, that not insecurity, that voice of keep going, don't take stock, don't look back, don't be self-satisfied is a good motor to make great things.
I fully believe that, yeah. Like that sort of insecurity is your security, you know. If that goes away, I think you're screwed.
Yeah.
That's just me
Hey,
personally.
hey, I got you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to carve it in stone or anything. I hear you.
Yeah.
But I find you very interesting, so I'm happy to hear you. I'm happy to hear you say it. How's going back to the Peaky Blinders thing? How's putting the suit back on?
It was strange. It was strange but familiar. Different but the same. Um, really, really happy with the script. We've got an amazing cast, a wonderful director. So,
How was it putting it on? How was physically putting it on? Did you
oh,
feel something?
actually, I thought
Did
you
you
were
feel
speaking
something when you put it on?
metaphorically.
Never. No, I'm not smart enough for that.
I yeah, like it doesn't. I can't just put the cap on and light a cigarette in your back. It takes a while to limber up to it. It always has. It hasn't been easy every time because he's so bloody different from me, and he's so relentless and uh, difficult. But I've enjoyed it. We figured out that it's 12 years since we started shooting the movie. Sorry, shooting the TV show, like 12 years exactly almost. And so that's a long chunk of time. Like that's a big chunk out of my life. So when you get going with him, it does feel a little bit like he shoves you out of the driving seat and starts driving the car, you know?
Oh, really? You feel like he kind of takes over?
Kind of, and again, you sound like such
Stop
a
it! Stop
pretentious.
it! Give it up.
But that's kind of what happens. I think when you've been playing a character for that long, it becomes there's something that is subconscious, not really like it's not really you're not thinking it, you know?
I suppose I'm just trying to imagine like Irish Marlon Brando, where he says, like, the most important thing is you really have to inhabit a character. As long as I don't sound pretentious now or anything like that, I don't want to sound like.
Yeah.
It's been it's the last thing I'll ask you is it's been really incredible to watch over the past few years Irish art really take off in an even bigger way. I mean, you look at the success of someone like Sally Rooney, and you look at the success of,
Yeah.
I mean, yourself in music like Lankum and Eve Vagabonds. I mean, some really. I suppose you've been around now for a while. Does this moment feel different? And what are you noticing?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me this, and I find it really difficult to answer. What is it about Ireland that produces all these
No, I
wonderful
didn't
art?
ask that, but
No, you didn't, but I'll still struggle to answer the question. I really don't know. I feel like like it's a happy coincidence. You know, you'd need to write a thesis on it, really. But where I don't really
I
know.
want to know
I
what
mean,
it's like. I want to know what it's like for you to see it. Not so much like, listen, I know what it's
oh,
like. As a Newfoundlander, I get asked all the time, why are you guys so funny? And why are you guys such great storytellers? And I don't fucking know. But
yeah.
but I can tell you what it's like to watch the art from where I'm from, which is a small place, do well.
Like to have people like, Paul Mescal's just going to crush it now in Gladiator 2, and Andrew Scott and Saoirse Ronan. And I'm working with Barry Keoghan at the moment, and as you say, this incredible music like the Fontaines DC. They're just an extraordinary band, and there's so much for such a tiny island. It feels amazing, and to be spoken about in the same sentence as those artists for me is really humbling. But like it's an incredibly high level. Like it really is. Like on those bands you mentioned, like Lankum and Sally Rooney, like it's phenomenal in the truest sense of the word. They are a phenomenon, And so, yeah, it's a brilliant time. And I go and see those guys play. I go and watch the movies, and I just get immense pleasure from it.
I'm a big fan, and it's nice to meet you. And thanks for making the time for us.
Nice to meet you, Tom. Is there any Irish in that?
Yeah, the where I'm from is like settled by Irish people from, I mean, years and years back. So we were sort of like
Yeah.
settled by Irish people who came over and didn't make it all the way to Boston, I think. And
Right.
so, yeah, it is a funny little accent to get people talking about it all the time.
Well, Power is a good Irish name. It's good whiskey as well.
Tom Powers is solid. I went to Waterford one
Solid.
time and there were like 3 pages of Tom Powers in the phone book. So
Yeah.
lovely to meet you. Thanks for the time.
Nice to chat, man. See you.